Shock Monkey Radio is created by adults for entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed here do not reflect the sponsors or FXPG Public Radio. For additional information, refer to the U.S. Bill of Rights. Stand warned. Let's go ahead and get to the news worth knowing. All right, so I guess we got to talk about this fustercluck. It's kind of a slow news week, and as news stories go, this is the story of the week. Probably the month. Probably for months. Years, possibly. Anyway, U.S. evacuates more than 700 from Afghanistan's Kabul airport. And I don't know if you've been living under a rock or something like that, but I don't know what the hell happened. Because apparently Joe Biden must have said, everyone just drop what you have in your hands and run. Let them have it. So since this is a top story, and I'm always using Fox News, there's several stories that are related to it, obviously. So I'm going to read headlines and like the fast facts over here. And it's like Fox is real nice about organizing the information like this. I do like these top stories, the way they treat them. So the State Department tells Americans in Afghanistan to shelter in place until they hear from the embassy. And you know what? I don't know what. Those Americans who are in Afghanistan right now is like, get out of there. Holy cow. And shelter in place is it's just terrifying. It's not like you might go outside and, catch COVID or something like that, then you'll get sick and you have to go to a hospital. It's nothing like that. It's like shelter in place because you might get kidnapped or murdered. And so from what I understand, there are like 5 figures number of people, like 10,000 or so Americans in Afghanistan still. All right. So, and I don't know if you've seen that video of the C-13. Anyway, C-13 was taken off and a bunch of Afghani guys, all guys, lots of guys, no women. You know why? Because the women are at home like they're supposed to be, as the Taliban sees it. All right, so it's all dudes. And they're all hanging on to these C-17s as they're taken off and falling off of them. All right. And in this other fast fact here is human remains were found in a C-17 landing gear after a Kabul evacuation flight. It's crazy. I don't know if they're that desperate to get out of Afghanistan with the Taliban in charge, and I think that's probably the case. If the Taliban's in charge and America's just walking out the way that they are, people there must be terrified. Yeah, so here it is. Yeah, 11,000 Americans may still be within Afghanistan. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said today. Is she back from vacation? Because she went on vacation. All right, people are giving Jen Psaki a hard time about vacation. I know, you got to schedule that with work, especially if you're the White House press secretary and stuff like that. It's like, you got to clear it by the boss. They got to sign some papers and stuff like that. Yeah, you could take a week off. It's like, then all of a sudden this breaks out. I mean, if she were really in contact with or in touch with what the administration was up to, she probably would have known this is probably a bad time to do this, Mr. President. Anyway, let's read some headlines of these other stories here. Like former ambassador laments that Al-Qaeda is back. We've turned Afghanistan into our mortal enemy. Another headline: with Taliban victory, Afghanistan could be become the second school of jihadism. Taliban claims it's more moderate, but killings continue in Afghanistan. The female journalists, they would the day before the U.S. left, they're not wearing burqas or nothing like that. They're all showing their hair and stuff like that. The next day, they're in burqas because they know what will happen to them. Anyway, State Department tells Americans in Afghanistan to shelter in place. Pompeo on Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. Biden administration didn't project American strength. That's the softest way to say that, dude. Anyway, Biden hasn't spoke to any foreign leaders since the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban, and the human remains in Kabul. The undercarriage of the C-17. All right, that's an opinion. I'm going to skip that. Americans and Afghan interpreters turning to Congress to help fleeing Afghanistan and the Taliban. Okay, so if you don't know, over the last 20 years, the U.S. has been fighting off the Taliban since 9/11. Okay. And we are trying to train this Afghan force to to fight against their oppressors. But as soon as they learned the U.S. was out, everyone just like laid down their weapons and said, screw it, I'm joining the Taliban. And so the way that they're spinning this is that it's a victory as soon as all the American troops are out of there. It's like, oh, we overran the Americans. It's like, it wasn't boots that did this. It was suits. It wasn't boots that did this. It was suits. All right. And the situation in Afghanistan is a complicated one, to be sure. But if these people don't want to fight against the horrible people in their lives, who are we to sit there and fight that fight for them? All right. To hell with them. To hell with the Afghan people. If they're happier with their women subservient and stuff like that, who are we to go across another country's borders and try to do that if only to fight the Taliban? All right. And Biden was correct when he said that, nation building is not the purpose of why we're there. The reason why the troops were there was to fight off the Taliban and keep them from doing something as horrible as they did on 9/11 or even the USS Cole. And that's why that was the mission in Afghanistan. Make no mistake, we're not there to help liberate women and educate women in Afghanistan because their culture doesn't want to do that. All right. And you got all these people who helped out the Americans when they were there. All right. A lot of them are going to get killed. A lot of them are going to get hurt and or killed brutally because of their assisting the Americans. And because of the way we walked out of there, because of the way we just dropped everything and ran, not only do they get a whole bunch of U.S. equipment, they get U.S. intel, all right, U.S. intelligence. They're talking about helicopters and shit. And that's what the Taliban's getting. Whatever we left behind, they're going to get. And anyone who trusted the United States during that time will never trust the United States again. Not to say that they ever did in the first place, but also any ally of the United States just wonders, is like, hey, if the shit hits the fan here in Germany, or if the shit hits the fan here in Japan, is the U.S. military going to cut and run? Especially with the old puppet as president, an old liberal puppet as president? So it's a complicated situation. I know that the counterterrorism activities that were going on inside Afghanistan, I know for a fact that it's all kind of based around U.S. air support and stuff like that. And the Afghans didn't really have that kind of stuff. And so as soon as the U.S. drones and the U.S. aircraft were all taken out of it, it was just Taliban with guns versus and drones or whatever they have as well, and just the Afghan forces that we had been training and their firearms, but they no longer have any command and control. They have no longer have air support. Maintenance. They don't have maintenance. So what else are they going to do other than lay down their arms? Been training them for 20 years, and as soon as they were out, okay, well, I guess we're done playing this game. It was a bad call. It was a bad call, and Biden's administration, that's his legacy. That's his legacy. No matter what you want to say about him sniffing kids and all that shit, no matter what you say, this is his legacy. And it's a damn shame. Anyway, let's go to the next story, which is kind of based upon the same thing. Afghan director issues warnings of massacres, child brides, banned arts amid the Taliban takeover. A director from Afghanistan is issuing a warning of what could come in Afghanistan after the Taliban seized power 2 weeks before the U.S. was set to complete its troop withdrawal following a costly 2-decade war. Sarah Karimi is the first and only woman in Afghanistan to hold a PhD in cinema and filmmaking and serves as the general director of the Afghan Film Organization. She took to Twitter on Friday in a plea to the international film community to speak up about protecting the people in the country. Quote, I write to you with a broken heart and a deep hope that you can join me in protecting my beautiful people, especially filmmakers from the Taliban. Karimi wrote in a lengthy memorandum. Quote, in the last few weeks, they have massacred our people. They kidnapped many children. They sold girls as child brides to their men. It's a humanitarian crisis, and yet the world is silent. They will ban all art. I and other filmmakers will be next on their hit list. In regards of the Afghan people, Karimi criticized the media and other humanitarian organizations for being silent and abandoning those in Afghanistan with U.S. troops and citizens being pulled from Kabul. Quote, we have grown accustomed to this silence, yet we know it's not fair, she wrote. We know that this decision to abandon our people is wrong, and that this hasty troop withdrawal is a betrayal of our people, and all that we did with Afghans won the Cold War for the West. Karimi pressed in her decree that she anticipates young girls who are attending school will likely be forced out under Taliban rule. Quote, our people were forgotten then, leading up to Taliban's dark rule, and now, after 20 years of immense gains for our country and especially our younger generations, all could be lost again in this abandonment. I don't know if you were abandoned. You know, if your nation had the will to stop things like massacres, child brides, and banning art, if your culture had the will to do that, they would pick up their weapons and fight the Taliban on their own. We're training you for 20 years. All right? I mean, obviously, I have sympathy for the human rights abuses that are happening in Afghanistan and are going to happen in Afghanistan for the next few months or years. All right? My heart also goes out to the people in Hong Kong, all right, who are now under the thumb of Chinese rule. My heart breaks for them. My heart breaks for the person in China who works under the Chinese Communist Party. You know, but do you really expect America to invade China and kick out the Chinese Communist Party for the sake of the humanitarian rights of those Uyghur Muslims or the average Chinese drone worker? Forgive me for calling them that. Is that what we should do? Is that what we should do? After all, we sat there and we trained the Afghanis for 20 years to fight against the Taliban, and we said, you're on your own. Granted, the way we did it was wrong, but they just dropped their weapons. They don't have the will. Your culture doesn't have the will to allow women to be educated, to fight for the right for women to be educated, to not be subjugated by these bizarre 8th century rules. All right? Your culture needs to go through a renaissance. You didn't go through a renaissance, and it's kind of fucked you up. It's kind of left you in the backwoods of human society. No offense. But I mean, if you don't have the will, I mean, I'm sorry. I guess it's just different because we're Americans, you know, and we understand that, you know, the blood had to be spent to fight for these rights. And if you've never known what it's like to have rights, I don't know. And the difference is that this woman has a PhD. Granted, it's in cinema and film, but she has a doctorate. All right? Unheard of among the strict Muslim Islamists. Okay? Educated woman. You best run to the West, because the West is the best. And they will probably want to cut your head off simply because you are educated as a woman. Anyway, I know I might sound cold and stuff like that, but hey, 20 years and you guys still don't have the will to fight against people as crazy as the Taliban. And even though like Joe Biden is like a dipshit, and I think that, you know, U.S. military service should be a requirement before you can even run for an elected office, because anybody who has served in the military would have known that that is a horrible idea. It's not. It wasn't the problem with the boots. The problem was with the suits. It was people in Washington who have no idea what it's like to fight a war, and it's just a couple. It's probably like Joe Biden and Jen Psaki really running the president with their hands up Joe Biden's back, running him, and it's probably just a bunch of women making these decisions. Well, let's just leave. We could just leave. We'll make a scene and leave. You can't thought that was funny. Anyway, yeah, let's make a scene and leave.